Okay, so I'll go ahead and start. Okay. Um, so at NYSCI, when we started the Learning Labs grant, we hadn't really done a lot of team programming in the makerspace yet, and mostly in the Science Museum it was difficult to kind of create this want or need for teens to be here because they're like, we don't want to go to a science museum because we did that when we were kids. So really trying to recruit people into this and seeing like, well, science museum can offer you a whole different concept. And so we hit the ground running and started recruiting teens. We opened up our space to the teens and really formatted it in the true Homago style, where that was very new to us, though the philosophy wasn't per se, but the concept, exactly how they were doing it was a little bit new. So really we started out by just kind of bringing the teens in, getting familiar with them. We already had a space. I know a lot of the grantees were able to design their whole space out according to the teens. So to kind of compensate for that, we let the teens kind of design the space for when they were here. Sorry, excuse me, I need some water. So, for example, we use it for a lot of different types of programming, but when the teens were here, we had bean bags and, the tables were a little bit more dispersed and it was just, music playing. So it was a little bit more, I guess teen-esque. And we just asked them what they wanted and we kind of supported that. So that was, the way it went. We did start, as the program went on, we started kind of focusing them a little bit on their kind of messing around stuff, or they would, we'd introduce them to different tools and then they would build those skills, and then whatever kind of tools they drifted towards, we would kind of focus them on a project. And we might have had, project, one kid making a horror film, one kid, designing, soundscapes on, digital recording projects, other kids working with 3D design and laser cutter. So it was, fairly diverse, but it was a small group. So we were able to, manage the different, challenges that came along with different projects. And that's pretty much how we ran most of the way through. A lot of the big challenges were the fact that we were inside a science museum and they needed some admissions. So trying to build up, network. We couldn't technically give them IDs to come in because they weren't employees. So it was a matter of trying to figure out ways that we could get them into the museum without it, being a challenge, or without us having to, like hold their hand through the experience, because that wasn't, the underlying concept. And then also the retention, because it was a very in-depth program where the kids were here a lot. It was, and it's very hard to get here. So sometimes it was hard to, consistently get the kids here. But one thing that we did do that we felt kind of pulled the kids in a bit more and gave them even more autonomy or, agency over what their experience was here was we started designing Learning Labs pop-ups. And through the tools and the experiences that the kids had here, they designed, with us, the space in a way that we would invite, anyone that wanted to come, focus more on teams. So they spread the word through their networks. They designed flyers, and we ended up making little videos, and they were able to promote that. And those ended up being, I think, some of the more fun that the kids had, most of the time, because they got to showcase, like, yeah, like I come here all the time, and this is what I do here. And they got to actually teach the, skills that they learned to other kids and peers. But then there was also other stations that we added as, like extra, kind of like, DJ stations where they could, mix and match beats and things like that. So it ended up being, like a really great project, but, kind of like having that culmination where you get to see all this hard work and planning coming out in a big event. And we had upwards to, 50 to 80 teams throughout each one of the pop-ups we did, which, for a, 3 or 4 hour event was pretty good. We also got a lot of teachers coming in like, hey, can I do this with my kids? And it's like, sure. I'm not stopping you. I wouldn't do that. So yeah, and I guess that's kind of the foundation and basis of what our Learning Labs was in the beginning.
Cool. Yeah, I think the mix here at the Science Museum of Virginia had some of the very same, like, similar beginnings and some of the same challenges initially as well. One, we faced this new kind of audience that we were trying to get of teens, and we hadn't really done any teen programming for a while. So we're trying to, communicate to the teens that the program exists, get them through the front desk, the admissions system, like you were talking about, David, and the challenges that come with that. So we had to develop. We were lucky enough to be one of the original, or the second cohort grantees, and we did have a clean kind of slate of a space that the teens got to develop and pick all the furniture and paint and all that good stuff. So that was kind of took the teens direction and let it evolve from there, and then have a similar kind of approach to Homago in the space like you did, with a lot of different projects going on at once. And that definitely brings some challenges of staffing and having to do a little bit more kind of jumping around, being a jack of all trades, and also doing a little bit more maybe one-on-one with various participants in the space. But we've tried to stick to that as much as we can, but along the way I've definitely realized that we need to scaffold a little bit more and add a little bit more structure throughout some of our programming, just to maintain some of that controlled chaos, I guess, that systems like this can bring. So and I think that's one of my the things about this visit that we got to take, Matt and I, to come up and see you at the hall, is that we got to share these things and see these challenges and these programs that you've built firsthand, which is a lot different than doing it via the internet like we're doing now. So that was great to see some of that and how things had changed. So
yeah, it was really awesome to see the kind of like we were talking about before, Matt, with the way we all kind of had a very similar starting point. We sort of evolved in these really, really interesting ways. The Tech Hive program at the Lawrence Hall of Science is started off in sort of in a similar place. We were part of the second cohort of grantees, and we had similar challenges, getting the word out, getting teens up there. Historically, the Lawrence Hall of Science did not have a big teen audience. One sort of benefit to the Lawrence Hall of Science, to a teen program at the Lawrence Hall of Science, is that we're associated with UC Berkeley. And so a teen having the ability to write that they were associated with UC Berkeley on their resume was sort of a big selling point, I think, for our program. So when our program first began, we had kind of, Sherry, the original director, Sherry, she had hired myself and another person by the name of AJ. And AJ was sort of the engineering side, and I was more the artistic side. And so we kind of broke up the team sort of based on their interest, who wanted to do video work, who wanted to do sculpting and kind of like crafting things, and I would sort of take them. And AJ would be doing more like programming and robotics and that sort of thing. And it was a great program, and it worked well for a while. But what we had kind of found is that over time, in order for these spaces to work, there needs to be a lot more cross-pollination. So we had sort of abandoned those individual projects quite early on. And by year 2, we were running large sort of central projects that everybody would work on together. So AJ and I would sort of work as the primary designers. And then we'd have these Tech Hive, what we now call interns, helping us build that project. And the projects were always these educational experiences or exhibits that we would show or exhibit on the main floor of the Lawrence Hall of Science. So in that way, we're actually able to use our association with the Science Center in a pretty unique way, and provide the teens with the ability to write that they were an intern on resumes and college applications and that sort of thing. So as the program sort of evolved and word got out we needed to accommodate more and more teams. So what we have, where we've actually ended up is we run 3 10-week programs throughout the school year. So one in the fall, one in the winter, and one in the spring. Each cohort will have between 25 and 30 students. And there's going to be a mix and a match in there of students who are returning or interns who are returning for second, third, fourth, sometimes fifth time with brand new interns. I think that the fact that we're kind of starting a new project every 10 weeks definitely keeps us as facilitators on our toes, but it does keep the program very fresh, and we've got kind of a lot of room to grow right now. So what we're trying to figure out how to do is to utilize our summertime a little bit better. So we're planning on turning the Tech Hive experience into a summer program. So I think that's kind of where we're heading to in the future. But that's kind of where we are at the moment.
Cool. There's actually like a couple of thoughts or questions came up as you guys were talking, and then compares here. But you guys, like the original teams you had or your original cohort, is there any? Have you heard from or do you know any where they are?
Yeah. So we've been tracking them, and
You're tracking them, right?
What's that? No, yes, yeah. We don't put like collars on them or anything. We're checking in with them via email. That's a better way to put it. So our first teens graduated college this past June. One had gone to UC Berkeley. I can't remember where the other one had gone, but those were in that initial cohort that we had of teens. Those are our seniors. So they've actually gone through college, both of them focusing on engineering, which was encouraging. Since then, we've been tracking. There hasn't been it's difficult to say whether or not we actually influenced their career choice or their path towards engineering. Many who applied had already sort of had an interest in that direction anyway, and this was sort of part of that interest. So we haven't had any surefire way of determining our role in their career path, but I can say that I'd say 40 to 60% somewhere in there are in some sort of STEM track.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what about you, Matt?
So I know for a fact, again, some of our members have definitely gone on to VCU and other schools around here, U of R, and gone into STEM-related fields. Again, like Matt said, I don't know if that was, their participation in the mix or if we can directly correlate it to that. But, they definitely had that interest beforehand, so that might be a part of it. One of, my favorite stories, I guess, is that one of our current mentors in the space, and our mentors are all paid staff, part-time museum staff, is a former mixed member, and she started when she was 14, I think. So, pretty much as early as she could join, and, then aged out and is now in college. Said that she directly told me that she went into this engineering track because of the mix and because she felt like she could do it after being exposed to certain tech tools and, ways of thinking. And she was like, oh, science is for me. And so that's what she's pursuing now. And she's a great mentor in the space for the other teens too. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, like with our cohort, our original cohort, it was definitely something that ideally we'd like to keep in touch with and such, but sometimes it's hard because people, go off and do a bunch of things. But it's nice as we host Maker Fair here every November. And so they know that, and they know, that I'm going to be here, or other people that work in the program. So they typically stop by our booth and such. So that's kind of nice. So we get those kind of tangential connections with them. And one of the teens originally that was in the cohort was, I was actually at a Shake Shack like downtown one day and randomly ran into her there, and it was really nice to see. And now, I mean, for some reason, when I work with people, they kind of get frozen in my mind about, you know, age and stuff. So of course I was like thinking in my head, is like, would she be in college now? Would she be? And like, she's been like graduated college for like 2 years. So are you, you know, like now, right? You know, like she was 5 years ago. I probably could have done the math, you know, but like, it's just hilarious. She's like, no, I'm like, I'm out of college. I'm doing, you know, and so, and it was really cool because what she was doing, she is part of this hip hop dance troupe, and they basically create, you know, plays and experiences and performances and things like that. And she, you know, referred to me as the greatest boss she ever had, which I kind of, anyway, boss is a little harsh, you know, because you do whatever the hell you want, or sorry, I don't want to, you know, Chris, you got to do whatever you want to do. Like I was your boss, I was your, you know, compadre, right? You know, like, oh, man, I'm not anyone's buddy. I'm still their boss. But it was to hear like, you know, how, you know, she instantly recognized me, and this is, you know, 5 or 6 years ago. So it was nice to kind of catch up. So those kind of, you know, random, you know, meetings at Maker Faire and stuff, I think is pretty inspiring.
Yeah.
And actually that kind of connects a bit to, and I know Lawrence Hall, Matt, you mentioned, you know, recruiting a lot from Berkeley and stuff, but if we could actually just, you know, maybe talk about that recruitment process and like maybe how that's changed, where originally you said you had trouble and now you have to have 3 cohorts of 30
Right.
each. Sounds to me.
Yeah. Yeah, we came up with some solutions for our problem and created a new problem.
Yeah.
Yes, originally, again, historically, Lawrence Hall of Science is a space for K through 5 students. So bringing in that tween teen audience was part of our role as a learning lab. Initially, we just had a section on the website. The Lawrence Hall of Science website, where people could apply to be an intern, and we'd sort of take it from there. With that, we found a few things. One, our numbers were pretty low, so we had a relatively small pool of people to choose from. And two, kind of going back to that, you know, that idea that a lot of these students had already had sort of an interest in engineering. We were getting students we're getting teens that kind of already had a track in mind. And that wasn't really the goal of our program. We really wanted to sort of provide a positive first touch with technology. And in order to do that, we needed to reach out to communities that might not have otherwise had access to the types of tools that Tech Hive was using and continues to use. So what we ended up doing is actually partnering with public schools in the area. What we did is we kind of developed relationships with certain teachers, teachers that were teaching either sort of maker classes or math and science classes, and then partnering with some counselors and some administrators. So what we'd actually do is when we're going to do our recruitment at the beginning of the year, we blast emails out to them, and we actually have the schools themselves recommend students. And the result of that has been really good. We've gotten a much more diverse group coming up in terms of skill level, in terms of socioeconomic situations, in terms of everything really. And the numbers have sort of gone way up too. So there's clearly a need for programs like this in the area. I think that was. We really hit a turning point when we kind of established these strong relationships with certain schools, and that's I think it's kind of how we solved that problem.
Mix, Matt, what do you?
Yeah, so our process was pretty drop-in initially and word of mouth. We had a brochure with a membership form because, again, our members did have to get a card so they could swipe in at the front desk and not have to pay to get in every time. So initially that worked really well. We saw a bit of a lull. Again, I think once we started changing the type of programming and adding a little bit more structure, we saw more kids coming in too, actually, which was interesting. I think that initial just like blank slate, freedom to do whatever was a little overwhelming. And then we started adding a few guidelines or a few kind of overarching projects like you're talking about, Matt, that may not last 10 weeks in our space, but they may last like 3 weeks or something. And that gave them a better sense of ownership and a larger project they could work on and then show off, but not necessarily have to start from ground zero on their own. So I think over time, that helped definitely. We definitely started doing more kind of outreach recruitment, and mostly like informational fairs and things like that. And we would, develop relationships with the teachers who are leading those as well. So that's helped us kind of develop another cohort of teens. Boys and Girls Club is a great partner of ours here in Metro Richmond. So we work very closely with them, mostly in the middle school setting, 6th through 8th kind of STEM out of school time programming that we take to them. But that's been kind of a great group of kind of upcoming mix members. So we always talk to them about the mix. If they're aging out of the OST program, they can come over to the mix. One way we try to increase recruitment is also getting people to the museum easier and helping them get there. So we provide bus passes now for teens who are in need of transportation. It's not the best bus system, but for some teens who want to be at the mix and have no other way to get there, it's helping them out, I think. So we've tried, various strategies. We've, obviously seen an increase in membership since year one, but we're up to, over 500 members, which we don't see all the time, but about a third of those we see on a pretty regular basis. And then the other
space with the mix, like that's a lot. It's like having the members. It's kind of almost like a community space in a way. So it's because like the way we did it, it sounds the way you guys do it at the Lawrence Hall. It's more programmatic, where yours it's not as much that way, right?
Right. Yeah, ours is definitely more of a community space with some program in there, just again to help guide them. But yeah, a little bit different. We're trying to mold all of the things together, meld all the things together, which comes with its fair share of challenges for sure. But yeah,
cool.
I think that's a fair. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, part of the reason we sort of went to this more sort of structured program was to try to encourage regular attendance. Our location up on the hill, we're located way up on top of the hill, away from any walking paths. So it was very difficult for students to get up there. Creating this program was helpful in getting that attendance. What is attendance like when you kind of have this open, this more sort of open program?
So, our daily numbers, we're looking at probably 20 teens in this 15 to 20 teens in the space. That's during the summer. During the school year, when we're only open during the weekends, our numbers are a little bit lower during the school year. So we'll see like 12 teens on a Saturday, 10 teens on a Sunday. Again, there's some repeat, but there's often a change out weekend to weekend. And they're all working on their own individual projects. Again, teachers will contact me because a group of students at their school want to, join the mix and use our green screen for a video project or something. So I'll kind of do these individualized projects during the week, during the school year, if staffing and time allows as well, to kind of open it up to other opportunities for some other teens. So, yeah.
I love that. That's something I actually really hadn't thought of, is kind of reaching out to certain teachers to use our space for very specific projects. I think that's a really great way to introduce your program to the community.
Yeah, it's not always doable, but
Yeah.
if we at least, make that option available, and if they realize that, we may not have the staff or
Right.
the expertise, but if we can work something out, then I'll do my best. Yeah. So.
Cool.
Yeah, I think, this idea that we're talking about, just constantly evolving and trying to do multiple things in our spaces and have them be multiple things for multiple, different user groups is what we're all about. And I mean, the mix here at the Science Museum has informed, our next exhibit that we're going to add on the second floor, which is going to be a kind of intergenerational makerspace. So because of what we've been doing in the mix, they see that this kind of makerspace has some value and has great potential for, you know, families to come in and do similar type of activities. You know, with obviously it's going to be kind of a different animal because it's going to be open all the time. It's going to be for families, not just teens. But the mix was kind of proof of concept for that, which is cool.
Yeah, and it kind of leads me, I think, to the inevitable topic, funding, where, you know, we had our original one, and the reason really, I think programmatically, at least for us, it has, you know, mushed and mashed in a bunch of different ways, existed, not existed, throughout the years, is, you know, a challenge. So like what's happened with us now is we have a teen program. It's a little bit, you know, has a lot more of the structure as far as scheduling and timing, but what they do here then is a bit more open, where they'll come in and they start out learning how to observe and, you know, learning how to think in a design kind of mindset, how to identify problems, how to, you know, identify design opportunities, you know, all that kind of stuff. And they start, you know, kind of building those skills up. Plus they also, on the other side, aside from the cognitive skills, is they build physical skills of, you know, using tools, from woodworking tools to pen and paper to, you know, 3D printing to laser cutting to, you know, whatever tools they need to kind of accomplish these, you know, smaller projects. And then the idea is that eventually, once they build these skills, they identify a local community problem in their groups, and then they design and build something that helps solve that problem, or at least contribute to the solving of that problem. And so, you know, a bit different than I think the original, you know, idea, but then, you know, you have to follow the funding. So that's kind of how ours has unfolded over the years. And now we're at the tail end of the funding for that, which is an NSF funded project. So now we're kind of on to our next, like, what inversion are we going to, you know, come up with to help get some money and to support this and be able to provide this for the teens. So if you guys can also just give a little bit of a, you know, segue into the years of how you've been able to manage funding it.
Sure. Yeah, I could jump in. So, I mean, obviously those early days with IMLS, the grant money was great. Helped us get off helped us get off the ground there. And I think what it provided more than anything, certainly in those early days, was just the time to experiment, which is great. And through that time, we were able, you know, kind of work very fluidly and come up with this structure that I think works well for all parties. After that funding ran out, we went to corporate sponsorship, which was good. We had some very generous companies that were kind of working with us for a while, and since then, some of the corporate sponsorship has sort of dried up, and we've become kind of more integrated into the Lawrence Hall of Science and their sort of general funding plan. And in that, I mean that where we were once, certainly when we first started, we kind of felt like our own company. We really didn't have to deal with anybody else in the Science Center. And now we're very much integrated into what the Science Center is doing, in that our programs inform summer camps that are coming up. Our programs inform some of the exhibits that go out. We've been involved in sort of creating some of the marketing media for the Lawrence Hall of Science. So I think as sort of time's gone on and the way we get money has changed, our relationship with our Science Center has changed quite a bit. And yeah, right now I think we being sort of the employees of Tech Hive, the Tech Hive staff are very much integrated into sort of the day-to-day operations of the Lawrence Hall of Science, and we're tied to their funding that way.
Yeah, I think it's similar for us. You know, again, IMLS funding and MacArthur funding was great. And then after that, I'm lucky enough to have a great foundation, and not sure if Lawrence Hall does, but we have a great foundation here at the Science Museum that was very supportive of helping me find grant money to sustain the program for, the years post IMLS MacArthur grant. So, that's what we've been doing. Going again, some of those are corporate sponsors, some of those are private donors. So just very generous people who kind of like the mission of the mix. It has been, not always the easiest sell, because sometimes donors are looking for highly quantifiable data about GPAs and our programs leading to graduation rates and things like that. So we've run into not problems, but definitely some funders who want a little bit more kind of that quantitative stuff that we're not really comfortable providing and saying that our program caused X or whatever. It's definitely a challenge. I think if you want to keep that program, the ethos the exact same the entire time, it's definitely a challenge because sometimes that limits the pool of grant money that you can go after, or that specific pool of donors. Luckily, we've been pretty lucky to find some good donors in the Richmond metro area so far. So that's been great. And I think now, kind of to speak to Matt's point, we're definitely becoming more integrated into the museum. My mixed mentors started off as interns technically who went to VCU. They're still paid, but they're getting paid through their college student work program. Then they were contract employees, and then now they're actual Science Museum of Virginia state employees. So we've seen an evolution in how the staff in the mix has transitioned to state. We're seeing definitely more integration within Science Museum programming and our programming, and kind of interplay between, kind of like Matt's saying, informing summer camps or future exhibits or whatever the case may be. So that's been really neat. It comes with, I think, another set of challenges as well, but that's been great because it kind of is starting to establish us as a core program of the museum. And I think once we cross that threshold, then we receive state funding, or part of our yearly state budget goes towards our program, and we don't rely so much on grant funding year in, year out. So that's, I think, the goal. That's where we're moving towards. And then, yeah, we'll see. That's the future.
Yeah, and I think let's, kind of at the tail end of this, let's kind of pull back to the trip you guys had out here to New York, and we, had the pleasure of going to DreamYard, which has always been a great experience for me, just, knowing them, doing their work, and it's really, really, hinged on, brain not working, social justice, thank you. Social justice and really getting the local community engaged, which was very underserved as far as general government and dollars go. So it was really nice to touch base with Hillary there and see how their programs evolved. And I think just hearing her talk about it, because DreamYard was unique in the way that it is not isolated. It's a single space. It's not within a museum or another organization. And they've been around, over 2 decades, I think. I can't remember exactly, but quite a while. And then injecting this kind of early adopter IMLS or MacArthur funding in there, and how that's kind of adapted in their programming, and how it's hard to, I guess, retain that in the same way. But I don't know if you guys had any insights of either just seeing the space and thoughts about what she was talking about, etc.
Yeah, Matt and I were talking about this earlier too. I think it speaks to kind of what the YOUmedia network is. Like, I think a lot of the YOUmedia programs, or their spaces and programs, are just very, very different. And that's the cool thing about the YOUmedia network, is that all of our sites have evolved to be so different. And, while DreamYard has a focus on social justice, we're examining things from a totally different lens down in Richmond, and just that ability to be different things based on your user group and, the needs of your neighborhood or your city. I think that was really cool. And plus, I'd never been to DreamYard, so it was really neat to see their strong, art focus, like fine art and fashion focus, which is really cool. And that social justice thing definitely takes it a different direction. And I think that's, something that we could all, definitely add to some of our programming as well. So.
Sure. Yeah. And I think, like you're saying, the strong art focus that they have there was something that was very inspiring, very beautiful. You could just see how the expression that was happening there in these different mediums was really great to see, and something I certainly want to find a way to reintroduce into Tech Hive. I think, with kind of becoming a program that's really focused on building resumes and building portfolios, strong engineering resumes and strong engineering portfolios. We've moved a little bit away from the art and the expression and these ways of approaching problems that are, I think, very accessible to people who might not have a lot of experience with technology. So what I really took away from our visit to Dream Yard was the importance of having sort of a strong art space throughout these programs, regardless of what sort of the academic focus is.
Yeah, and I think that, that art aspect of it is something that in a science museum, and even as I guess, I don't know if I can still consider myself an artist, but as somebody that art at some point in their life, it's not always, on the forefront, which I think what art does is it's an accessibility, especially for kids, where it's like, it's not about using this high-tech tool or even about using this low-tech tool. It's like expression. And I think starting from that point of expression and what you feel you can express, there's a familiarity there, or if there's not, it gives you a medium to do that expression. I think that's something, I would like to do a lot more in a science museum setting, because, I think with this whole like STEM, there's all kinds of different acronyms, and just dropping all the acronyms and just calling it learning is, kind of one of my long-term visions. So, by really, purposefully injecting the concept of art and creativity, I guess, they make their ways in, but to do it intentionally, I think would be definitely an advance for us here.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I don't know. You guys have anything else you want to talk about as far as the trip? And aside from the Greek food, I know you're dying.
Yeah, it was delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, maybe just one final thank you to you, David, for hosting us, having us out there, and really kind of being our tour guide around New York City for a couple of days there. It was a really great experience.
Yeah.
Glad to do it, and I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. It's if you couldn't tell by that visit, I enjoyed sharing and talking about what I do. So I also enjoy hearing and seeing what other people are doing. So yeah, it was a fun kind of what I call a little vacation from my job. Even
Right.
I always view that as like, I'm not really working here. This is just kind of awesome.
Rock and roll.
Okay, cool. Well, hopefully I'll see you guys, sooner rather than later. But enjoy. And I'd like to hear maybe updates from you, Lawrence Hall, Matt, on the side. But
Yeah. We'll check in.
Cool. All right.
Yeah. All right. Hey, take care.
You guys.
Bye.
Bye, Matt.